and welcome back to the Planning Pulse podcast. My name is Matt Harvison, the Principal Practice Lead for all things Workday Adaptive Planning at Ikorio. With me today, as you can see on the screen, I've got the dream team as it relates to Workday Data Management. We are continuing our integration mini-series within the podcast. We've hit on NetSuite, we've hit on our Cloud Data Warehouse connectors. Today, we're going to be talking about Workday Data Management. Because it's such a broad topic, we're going to be separating it into a few different series within a mini-series. Today, we're going to be focusing primarily on Workday Data Management, bringing data from Workday Core, whether that's HCM or financials, into Workday Adaptive Planning. In the future, we'll be talking about how we can publish data from Workday Adaptive Planning back out to Core HCM or Core Financials. We'll also spend some time getting really in-depth talking about tenant migration strategy. But today, we want to focus holistically on Workday Data Management from HCM and from Workday Financials into Workday Adaptive Planning. So when we think of Workday Data Management, we're talking about bringing data over. And really, when we think about bringing data from another system into Adaptive, there are some key considerations that we need to take. The first of which, Daniel, I may pick on you to help us out here. The first of which that I can think of is establishing user synchronization, power of one. Talk us through some of those considerations when it comes to securities and permissions.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest part to talk about it is user sync. Should you or should you not enable it? From here, the biggest end case for clients is going to be, do they expect or do they want to have their users access Adaptive via Workday? Essentially, we know that Adaptive has its own standalone URL, but if you have a existing HCM or FINS instance or tenant, as you call it, it gives you the opportunity to access Workday and then drive yourself into Adaptive natively. Some opportunities there with user sync also give the ability to publish either financial plans, workforce actions, or headcount plans from Adaptive back to Workday as well. So another opportunity on having that power of one that Workday likes to claim, where essentially it's an all-in-one purpose tool. So not only are you able to plan within Adaptive, but also circle back into your HCM module, your FINS module, and anything so on and so forth. Ultimately, it's a super powerful tool to where clients will decide, what's the future state of Adaptive and kind of connect from there. It also does give the opportunity where you don't necessarily need to enable user sync, but you can have Power One connected to allow for metadata to flow through from Workday into Adaptive as well. So whether you're planning your financials, your personnel, or any of that nature, you want to see information that's coming from Workday directly in Adaptive without having to manually maintain it. Super helpful for clients in the end to automate their processes and go from there.
So should customers think of user synchronization as essentially leveraging core HCM or core financials as a single sign-on point into Adaptive? Is that a good way of thinking about it?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then when we think of Power One, like you said, that it just allows us to flow data back and forth. Is that accurate statement?
Correct.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks, Daniel. So when we think of flowing data back and forth for HCM, we're thinking about roster data. For financials, we're thinking about GL related data. There are some important underlying components to that data. We refer to it as metadata in the Workday world. But Tess, maybe I'll pick on you next. When we think of metadata, maybe break that down for us. What do our listeners need to know when they're considering bringing over metadata from a core environment?
Yeah, so metadata in an adaptive sense is the automation of your structural elements. So your accounts, your levels, your dimensions, your attributes. What it does is it integrates those values automatically from your source system and prevents your users from having to both manually create them and update them. So if you have a value that's integrated in from metadata, if you update it on your source system side, that update is automatically going to flow into adaptive as well. So it's really important for users who don't want to manually maintain those elements. From a Workday sense, it allows us to be able to send data back into Workday without those elements being automated via metadata. We don't have that back-end internal ID associated with them, which is how the data will read back from Adaptive into Workday, so it knows which value translates between the two systems.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying is if somebody adds a new hire or opens a requisition inside of Workday HCM through the metadata configuration, what we can actually do is automate the creation of those values for rec ID or position ID or worker name. Or on the GL side, if we add a revenue category or spend category, it's going to automatically create that value inside of Adaptive for us. Is that right?
Exactly. It prevents you from having to create those values in two different source systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's extremely powerful when you think of leveraging a single platform, right? When you've got financials and you've got Workday Adaptive Planning, flowing the data from financials without having to worry about failed mappings based on new, maybe GL accounts or revenue or spend categories being created. It's an extremely powerful part of having that single platform. Now, we've talked a little bit about users, how users can log in from their core environment into Adaptive. We've talked about bringing data over from those sources as well and sort of automating some of those underlying data points. Maybe, Anna, let's talk a little bit about the actual data itself. What does that look like bringing over roster data or GL data, beyond just the metadata configuration? What does it look like to bring data over from one of those core environments?
Yeah. So the one thing I always love to tell clients is that if you can put it together in a custom report in Workday, we can pull that over into Adaptive. Because the way the connection essentially works is you can create like a personnel report or a journal lines report on the fin side. And as long as we can set up that report on the Workday side that has all your details, we can pull that over to Adaptive, manipulate it as we need to, and then get that loaded in. So we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to translating like Workday data into Adaptive, and most of it, if you do have the metadata set up, is relatively faster just because we can map everything because the names match, the codes match. There's not really like a mapping exercise that you'd have to go into once we pull that data over.
So that advanced report that you're talking about, is that something that customers can create on their own? Is it something that they have to have, like a partner like Ikorio help them establish? Talk to me about that advanced report. Are they able to create their own?
Yeah, so custom reports, clients can build themselves. Most people who would have a Workday tenant probably are used to seeing kind of like their own custom reports. What we can do, like when we come in, is either we start using one of their existing reports as a baseline if it has everything that they already need, or we can start from scratch to help them set up a custom report that does fit their needs, because we do have the flexibility of like going into Workday itself to make those reports to make sure that all the details of the client's needs are in there.
Gotcha. And I hate to put you on the spot. Would you happen to have any type of example that we could pull up on the screen, maybe just demo quickly what either the advanced report or what the report inside of Adaptive would look like as it's sort of ingesting that data?
Yeah, let me share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and start on the Workday side. So first, I know Daniel already touched on this, but the way you get from Workday into Adaptive is just going to be menu. You're going to have a few apps here. That's going to be one specifically for adaptive planning. And then you just get to hop over straight onto Adaptive. So it's like a one quick, easy login. Once you're in Adaptive, I'm gonna jump into the backend real quick on what the integration setup looks like. Here's the data source that has a little Workday connection to it. And this is the part that Tess was talking about with the metadata reports, where we have like each individual element. We have a different report set up for it, like dimensions, compensation grade, cost center. I could go on. It's a long list. But similar to that, we'd also have a different data source that's pulling in our, for example, here, our personal roster data. So this is like in our demo environment, so don't worry, not disclosing data, but this has like the full list of every single position we have in Workday and what that looks like, all the start dates, end dates, kind of any attributes you want. Here you can see we have like 101 columns, which is just essentially trying to pull over like all the necessary data we need from Workday. And then when we look at it on the adaptive side, so that's going to be this current worker sheet. This is kind of the landing spot in adaptive for that data. And in that data, we've like parsed down the data to like basically be the columns we require, but it essentially has the same data as you would see in Workday. And since we have Power of One enabled and also like user sync and all of that, what it does, it allows you to drill in from the adaptive side back into Workday. So if I was to pick on a random job profile, right click, and then drill into detail, my screen timed out. Give me 1 second to refresh it.
The power of a live demo, right? This happens to me quite often, but as you can see, we're able to adjust on the fly, no problem at all.
Yep. So then we open it up, job profile, same row, drill into details. And that opens up a little pop-up that just takes you back into Workday to give you the details. So that way you have already a two-way connection. We're not talking about publish or pushing data from Adaptive into Workday yet, but you're still able to drill into details from Adaptive straight into Workday. This
Excellent.
initial screen.
So Anna, this view that you're looking at essentially is the advanced report coming from Workday into Adaptive, metadata automation for all of the underlying work tags in Workday that turn into dimensional values for us inside of Adaptive. And our users can then leverage user sync to sign on from core into Adaptive, right?
Yeah. So this is how all those three pieces would essentially come together.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate the demonstration here. As you all have sort of learned from the beginning, this is going to be a mini series within a series. We're talking about bringing data from Workday into Workday Adaptive Planning. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about publishing data from Adaptive back into Core Financials or Core HCM. And then we're going to talk about tenant migration strategy in a third episode. So just a few extra steps that we're going to take to really dig into the details between Workday and Workday Adaptive Planning, because it's really important to understand the power that you have with the single platform that exists with having the full Workday suite. So Tess, Anna, Daniel, thank you so much for the time today. Any closing comments, remarks that you have for our listeners today?
Yeah, one final plug is that Workday is ever evolving. In this example, we've seen huge updates over time in their work, their quarterly or biannually releases here. So a great example is, the automation of PCM. So pairing your user sync access while creating an easier integration for your clients in the end, or the opportunity now for UAM, which is just unified access management, just leveraging Workday security policies and Adaptive as well. So they're making things very, very seamless in the future, a lot of roadmap items. So we're looking forward to those in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Workday continues to reinvest. I know that if you've listened to the Planning Pulse in the past, you know that we are big on Workday's reinvestment back into the product to really increase and enhance that user experience. Tess, anything from your side?
I think Daniel covered it perfectly.
Well, Tess, Anna, and Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to continue this mini-series next week by talking about the bi-directional flow of information from Workday Adaptive Planning out into core Workday Financials and core HCM. Thank you so much to our listeners for paying attention as we went through user synchronization, metadata configuration, and actual bringing data into Workday Adaptive Planning. You will see us again next week. You can plan on it.